Tucker Nation? Welcome back once again. This is your host, the G-Man, as we continue our 2016 NFL Draft preview with a position-by-position breakdown. Today we're going to speak about cornerbacks, and cornerbacks are a sexy pick. Cornerback, wide receiver, quarterback, everybody loves them. Defensive end, they are hugely important to your team. Today's NFL, it's all about corners who can cover one-on-one without using their hands, because you're not allowed to use your hands in the NFL. God forbid you hit somebody. Corners are very important, and this is a very, very good cornerback draft. I would consider this an A draft, maybe the deepest position in the draft. A lot of top-level talent, a lot of guys later on that can do one thing or the other for you, whether it's a slot guy or somebody who can play against bigger receivers. A lot of talent in this draft. So let's get started with the top. And the top is clearly Jalen Ramsey. I don't know that he's Deion Sanders or Richard Sherman, as some people want to make him out to be, but he is far and away the best of this group. He is supremely talented. He does use his hands a little bit too much. In Florida State, they actually play a physical brand on the defensive backfield. But the NFL may not allow that, but he has size and speed to make up for that. He won't just be a player against the pass. He can play the run. A lot to like about Jalen Ramsey. I liken him to a Xavier Rhodes. I actually like Xavier Rhodes quite a bit, so I think Ramsey has a chance to be a special player in the NFL. The guy who I like second most, and I think it's actually closer than people think, is Eli Apple from Ohio State. To me, from an overall standpoint, not with the top-end speed, he is the best in this draft as far as playing off the ball, not playing with his hands. He's not as fast as Ramsey, but he's certainly fast enough. And he has that long, lean build that's really in vogue right now that NFL teams look for. He can probably slide over to safety if he needed to. He can play all three of the receiver positions, including in the slot. Maybe big enough to cover smaller tight ends with speed down the seam. I really like Eli Apple. Again, tough to gauge these Ohio State players because they play with such superior talent, but I really think he has a chance to be excellent. I think he's going to be like a Sean Smith from Kansas City this past year. Third player I like, and again, I like him more than other people do, and that's Mackenzie Alexander from Clemson. Was hurt a lot. He's generally considered about the third or fourth round pick by most of the experts, but not by this expert. I think Mackenzie Alexander will be a great first round pick, late first round, maybe early second for most teams. He's had injury problems, and that hurts him. He's also a little bit of a risk taker. I think that was also part of their scheme. A lot of times when he would take the risk, he would get there. He has a lot of talent. He is fast, and he's quick. He's not going to be a big hit you guy. He's not an overly physical guy. But as a corner, I think he can tackle well enough, and his ball skills make him really valuable. I see him as a top 25 pick. He'll probably fall out of that, and some will get great value. He strikes me as an Antonio Cromartie, not modern-day Cromartie, who was absolutely brutal, but Cromartie in his prime. I think Mackenzie Alexander has a bright future. Number 4 on my list is the guy who's number 2 on everybody else's list, and another guy that for my beloved Eagles I think is probably going to be there that people want them to take, and that's Vernon Hargreaves. I do love his skill set. I've seen his size, and I saw Florida play a lot this year. He never stood out. Very rarely did you look and say he's the best player on the field. And that always concerns me, especially when you're playing against the type of elite talent Florida did. That's the type of player you're going to play against in the NFL. You'd like to see a guy stand out. I am concerned that the Eagles wind up taking him. He does have risk, but it's tough to fault them because the consensus in the league and everyone around is that Hargreaves is the next best, and it certainly is a position to need. Now, all that I just said about Hargreaves kind of pales in comparison to who I'm going to compare him to, and that's Tyrann Mathieu. And I'll be the first to admit I was wrong about Tyrann Mathieu. I thought he was going to be too little to be a safety and not fast enough to be a corner. Turns out he's both. He's fast enough to be a corner, and he hits like a linebacker. So I was 100% wrong about him. So Hargreaves would love for me to be as wrong about him as I am about Mathieu, but I do have my concerns about him. Number 5 on my list is Kendall Fuller from Virginia Tech. I am always biased about Virginia Tech defensive backs. I think they train them well. I think they play in a good system. They teach them to use their feet and their hands and be physical. That's Fuller. He isn't overly big. He's a runner. He's a hitter. And some of his lack of size, is negated by his jumping ability and his willingness to hit. I think he's good with the ball in his hands, so I think he can actually help you in the return game if you decide to go in that direction. But his real value, he'll be immediately able to step in the slot, maybe cover tight ends, although he's not overly giant. he is willing to lay the wood. So I think he can cover a tight end. He reminds me of a nice, steady Logan Ryan type. Now, Logan Ryan's better than steady. Logan Ryan's a Pro Bowler, and deservedly so. But I do think Fuller has some good upside. Next 5 in order, William Jackson from Houston. Very talented, contributed some on offense. Ball skills are good. I saw him get burned quite a bit. A lot of people around the league really love him. He may wind up in the first rounds. I saw him get burned a little bit. He scares me. I'd still take a shot on him. Rashard Robinson from LSU. Big, tall, lean guy. Actually, too lean. But LSU corners generally have a ton of talent because that's a position that when they recruit, they think highly of. And I think he's no different. I think he has a chance to be pretty good. Artie Burns from Miami. He's not the stud athlete that you generally think of when you think of Miami, Florida. The U usually creates these guys that are amazing athletically and not so sound technically. He's very sound technically. I think he's going to transition well. He might be an outside corner, not just a slot guy, even though he's targeted right now for the slot because of his size. So I think he's got an upside. Kaivari Russell from Notre Dame. He's going to be much better suited to play in a zone. He doesn't have a ton of speed. He's decisive, and he does read the play really well. So I think given the right system and the right schema, he's got a chance. And last on my list is Zach Sanchez from Oklahoma. Absolutely destined to be a slot corner because of his size, but he has a ton of speed that'll carry him far. He does have good ball skills. Again, another potential contributor in the return game. But he's going to be limited by his size. He's going to wind up being an inside corner. And these guys are that size. Instead of being dejected and upset a la the Brandon Boykins of the world, should just realize it's okay to be the third corner in a 3-receiver set, which is 80% of the NFL now, and be a damn good one. So that's where he's going to fit in, I think. So, again, I think corners are very deep. Teams always need a good cornerback. You have to have a short memory. You have to have a lot of speed, and a lot of these guys do. So with your 2016 position-by-position review of the NFL draft today, we talked about your cornerbacks. I'm your host, G-Man, and I am out.